Welcome to E5 Live Podcast. I'm your host, Hoopie, and I'm here with a special guest. Um, Looking forward to chopping it up with him. Um, as we get deeper into the conversation, you'll know and understand that this is my older brother, and we share a lot of history as well as experiences together. But I just want to say thank you for tuning in, and I ask that you would share and subscribe, like, and upload that to your platform so that others will come to know that we are existing on this particular platform. Also, we want to ask that you would encourage us by sending in a couple of comments, questions, things of that nature that we can prepare to address and also bring resolve if we're able to. But this is a great opportunity to sit down and share some vital information that I believe you'll be able to relate to. There's a couple of things that we're trying to do in this sequence as we present it to you. Number one, we want to bring exposure, education, encouragement, enlightenment, and empowerment to each and every one that will follow us. Again, this is a platform I think that's very versatile. It has a lot of components to it, but today we're going to talk about some things that we see and experience in the urban culture and the dynamics of family, professionalism as it relates to what we do. And I just think that you're going to really enjoy. Our special guest today is Charles Mays. He's my older brother. I'm going to let him pretty much give you some details about himself. But it's just, it's just a pleasure to have him on and to be able to talk and chop it up. And so I just want to say welcome to the platform, bro.
Thank you.
I know we've been wanting to do something on this order, being that, you have a strong background in entertainment as it relates to acting and that nature. So, I mean, to tell your story, I think is almost monumental, especially in this day and time. And so I'm just saying thanks for being here, and you at home, and speak to the audience, let them know pretty much some things that you have encountered, and some things that you really feel like would be instrumental to them moving forward. I think when we start to look at the dynamics of today and what we're facing as black men in this nation, in the culture, it doesn't seem like it's an even, it's an even field of play. And so I just want to ask one question before we get going. The topic that will kind of spring from is the wrong perspective. I think that's important because of what we're experiencing even on Capitol Hill the other day.
Right.
The perspectives are all discombobulated. They're just not realistic. And so the first question to you is, introduce yourself and tell the people where you're from.
Charles Mays. When I joined Screen Actors Guild, changed my stage name to Chase Spencer, so I go by Chase Spencer. But anybody who knows me, especially people who I grew up with, went to school with, they know me as Charley, Charles Mays.
Yeah.
Born in born in Los Angeles, California. Came to Inglewood when we were small kids, so we really were born and bred in Inglewood.
Yeah. I think from the perspective of black men in society today, is a misrepresentation because a lot of people think that we're limited to just being entertainers. You know, we gotta entertain somebody.
Right.
And I know that you spend ample time in that industry, you know, looking to go to certain levels, but then, you know, you can speak to that better than I can. There's a lot of shortage or stoppage there, you know, that may prevent you from getting, you know, to where you'd like to go. I mean, can you speak to that?
Speaking of entertainment business, right?
Yeah.
Speaking just on the entertainment, I'm a studied guy. I went to school and studied acting for off and on for 10 years at probably one of the most prestigious schools in LA, Beverly Hills Playhouse.
Yeah.
You have a lot of, you know, the George Clooney's, the Michelle Pfeiffers.
Yeah.
They came out of the same school.
And then you had a really popular instructor.
Oh yeah. My first instructor was Richard Lawson.
Yeah.
He's the guy that's married to Beyonce's mother.
Yeah.
So he was my first instructor in terms of learning the craft.
Yeah. Because I mean, you know, we saw him on the screen and on TV, you know, as kids, you know, and then he survived a plane.
He was in a plane crash in New York. The plane skidded off the runway in LaGuardia, wow. And I was actually a student with him at the time he had the plane crash. He ended up getting the soap opera. I think it was All My Children, and he was going back and forth, and that's when the plane crash happened. When he was in, I think he was living in New York at the time, and he had just gotten that soap opera All My Children.
Yeah, I remember seeing a few of those.
And this also was a guy who, when I first came to the school and I looked, I'm thinking like, hey, I know this guy. I remembered him from Dynasty. Back in the 80s.
Back in the day.
He was Diane Carroll's love interest in Dynasty, which for me, you know, I looked at this guy as a positive black role model and somebody for me as a little kid. I'm thinking like, well, wow, if this guy can do this, then I can do it. So when I ended up, you know, decades later walking into this school and I looked and I'm like, this guy's my instructor. I'm thinking like, oh man, this is the guy who I grew up idolizing.
He was an influence.
He was an influence. You know. Yeah.
Real handsome guy too. I mean,
fresh dude.
Yeah, real handsome.
Actually,
guy.
him and the black model, the beautiful black model in the 80s.
Not the guy from
the beautiful black model. She was the first.
Not Jane Kennedy.
Not Jane Kennedy.
She came out. Beverly
Johnson was him and Beverly Johnson at the time. He was like he had a hit show in New York, so he was like the Billy D at the time of the black actors. This is
in that 80s era.
Pre-Denzel.
Okay.
He was the guy, and then Beverly Johnson was the black model. So they were kind of like, you know, those were the two, and they kind of ruled the 80s of the black black entertainers who were popular.
And both of them were stunning.
Exactly.
I remember the guy, and that was in the 70s when we thought of Miami Vice.
That
brother was really handsome too.
He was another guy who we grew up as black men in the ghettos and in the black neighborhoods. Like, man, this guy, you know, he was like cool, and he was black, and we were black.
Right. And you know, they were fashionable guys.
They were fashionable.
You know, they were wearing pastel colors.
Right.
You know, we didn't really know. We were young. We couldn't relate Miami tropical weather and so on and so on to LA.
Right.
Even though we had the same type of weather.
Right.
But, you know, we weren't as, you know, prone to wear those pastel colors.
Right.
And then when we got into high school, I remember certain guys that were wearing polo and flip shirts.
Right.
They had the multiple colors in it. And you know, we thought that was cool, but
and I know you may not be aware, you might be aware, but I'm gonna bring to your attention. This is the same guy that was in Sparkle.
Right.
The young handsome dude in Sparkle.
Right.
And then we knew him from Sparkle, and then all of a sudden he's Miami Vice.
Yeah, exactly. So you know, I mean, I think that pretty boy look back then served its purpose because, you know, like you said, these guys were probably falling into that same category as the Billy D. Because Billy D had the the 60s.
He was the guy.
Sold up.
He was the guy.
He was a handsome face.
He was the guy.
And here these brothers come along and they're
the
able to personify that
and
same thing.
And I don't know if the audience is aware of this or they have to understand this. I'm involved in Hollywood. Hollywood is not going to allow 3 Denzels. They're only going to let one at a time. They're only going to have one black leading man like a Denzel. Then it was Billy D, and then when Billy D was gone, he got older, and then it was Sidney Poitier.
Yeah.
Then it was Billy D.
Yeah.
Then it was the Denzel.
Yeah.
Then it'll probably be somebody else after Denzel gets a little older. But that's kind of how Hollywood is. They're not gonna have 3 or 4 good-looking black leading men in Hollywood. That's just not what they're gonna do. Maybe now because things are changing because of the whole thing that's happening with the the black
technology too.
Technology.
A lot of people are they're going digital.
Right.
They're actually streaming. And they're doing small.
Right. They're doing their own
small
thing.
docs.
Right.
And
they're doing short films. Exactly.
Short films.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I get that dynamic because it's competitive now too.
Yeah.
Back then they had a stronger foothold.
Yep.
On who they wanted in.
They had more control. They still have control in Hollywood, but they had much more control because it was almost like they had the blinders on and wasn't anybody looking. Now the blindfold is off. Okay. Everybody's looking in Hollywood. They're looking like, well, wait, why isn't this diverse or why isn't that diverse? And if you can see in the last couple of years, things have gotten a little bit more diverse in terms of film and TV and stuff like that because, Black Hollywood now is really not going to allow it and stand for it. Not like it was. It's not. It doesn't have that stronghold on it like it did in the 60s and the 70s and even the 80s and even the 90s and the early 2000s. It's starting to evolve a little bit for the good.
Yeah, and then I think like the gentleman down in Atlanta.
Tyler Perry.
I mean, he got through the door, and it seemed like he was able to keep himself. Right. Meaning, his creativity didn't stop. He started putting out a lot of material. Yeah. He started doing sitcoms. Yeah. He started really, in other words, he started putting people on.
Because that's how you control your own destiny. If you have the name and if you have the resources and if you have the money, you have to make your own film. Right. Because white Hollywood is not going to make the film for, you have to understand, they don't write films with black people in mind. They may write a film with Denzel in mind or Halle Berry in mind, but everybody doesn't write with them in mind.
They're writing, and then like you said, it's only a small, it's a veneer of people that they're even willing to
let in there.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's how it is.
Okay. So, and this is interesting too, because we know the black culture, we know our history, and we're known for having talent.
Right.
We're beyond a diamond in the rough.
Right.
You can go to any ghetto, any inner city, and you're gonna find major talent.
Right.
Some you may have to polish.
Right.
But you're gonna find
raw talent.
Right.
Raw talent.
So, speaking to the entertainment side, where you're from, you came from Los Angeles, you migrated to what was considered a suburb at the time. That was a suburb. That was, Inglewood was a suburb.
Right, when we came there.
Right. And then as it became more diverse, then it was considered the hood.
It was considered urban.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was like the white flight, right?
Right.
So my question to you is, being that you're from LA, but raised in Inglewood, was there an advantage? Did you feel like you had perks being like, I would consider it bi-coastal.
Right.
Some people, don't think, being from LA and Inglewood is bi-coastal.
It's two different worlds.
There you go.
And you know what, I am going to speak it because me and you coming from LA, which
East LA,
the real hood,
the
low bottoms. And coming from there to where we moved to was almost like moving to another state.
It's like culture shock.
It was culture shock because what you saw in the inner city where we lived in the lower bottoms of LA, what you did as a kid, how you played, places that you went, food that you ate, your environment around you was like night and day. When we moved to Inglewood, it was almost like we moved from California to like Colorado.
Right.
That's the difference.
Right.
Because
Right.
because even the people were different where we lived in Inglewood. Because when we came there, it was still white.
Oh yeah.
It was still white when we were there.
We had a lot of white neighbors.
Yeah, I mean, like if the block had, let's say the block had 50 houses on one side and 50 on the other, probably still 50 of them was occupied by white.
Right.
So as you said before, then it started to kind of digress into them leaving and going to Hawthorne and Torrance, and then more blacks come in or whatever. But basically, coming from the inner city, coming to Inglewood was the best thing that ever happened to us as kids.
Yeah.
Because one thing about our mom, she always wanted us, she always looked out for her boys because she had boys. So she knew that she couldn't live anywhere with us.
Yeah.
She had to make sure that we went to we moved to certain neighborhoods because if she got 4 black young men who she had to look out for. So me and you and all of us coming to Inglewood was probably the best thing that ever happened to me as a young kid, because I'm looking at how it is in the bottoms now and in the lower bottoms in LA where we grew up from. It's gotten worse.
Yeah.
In terms, it's gotten worse.
So you said something really interesting yesterday. You were saying that you raised the question, what if we would have stayed?
Oh man. Oh man.
What if we would?
Oh,
now be careful because we got cousins.
Man.
But no, from your perspective, what if we would have stayed?
From my perspective, if we had stayed in where we lived, okay, it was 4 of us. Out of the 4 of us, I think the neighborhood would have grasped a hold of at least 2 of us, and I think it would have changed us in terms of education wise and what we learned and what was taught. You have to understand, you have to get out of those negative environments, because if you're in a negative environment, and that's what you're gonna learn. You're gonna gravitate to negativity.
Yeah.
You're gonna gravitate to people who may be a little less inclined in terms of their education and the way that they brought up their kids or whatever. Yeah. We can't go back. Hindsight is 20/20, but I know that we would have ended up being different young men and different older men if we had stayed where we stayed.
I got you.
I know for a fact it would have been different.
Now, we did experience a dynamic of seeing men lead their families.
Right.
Because Big Daddy was always there.
Right.
I mean, he and Big Mom stayed married for all those years.
Right.
Right. And we know it wasn't a perfect marriage, a perfect relationship.
Right.
But
we felt the love, though.
We felt the love, and they stayed together.
Right.
And the number one thing was family.
Right. Right.
So even as we began to develop, as little kids, we had a man who stood above us to make sure we understood fundamental things.
Right.
Number one, you keep your name good.
Right.
And you don't get into harm's way with these white police.
Right.
He really, really talked about not getting in trouble.
Right.
With
the law.
With the law.
Right.
So being that we understand now that there was an advantage of moving from that environment into a new environment, we still had an edge because we understood survival.
Right.
We understood grind.
Right.
We understood how to persevere.
Right.
Some of the guys that we ended up meeting and becoming friends with couldn't even relate.
Right.
And it was no disrespect, but when we took some of those guys back to where we grew up, we saw the difference.
Right.
It was almost like
it was like night and day.
It was like, tell me y'all didn't live over there.
Yeah. And another thing too, just to go back and touch on it, I think me and you, I can't speak on our baby brother, resting in peace, and I can't speak on our older brother, but me and you have to understand that in life, God gives you gifts. and he gives everybody gets it.
Everybody
get a gift, but you have to harness that gift
and develop,
and you have to develop, and you have to nurture it, and you have to cultivate it.
Yeah.
And for me and you, we grew up as naturals. I mean, we were naturally talented in terms of just even being young, intelligent little boys.
Yeah.
Of course, we had help from our mom
Yeah.
and our stepdad, who kind of, helped us along the way and guided us.
Yeah.
But pretty much, we were self-taught, and we learned everything on our own. I mean, there's not a lot of people that can say whatever they touch, they can perfect. We perfected everything we've done. We were self-taught gymnasts. We were self-taught basketball, football, baseball, swimmers, everything.
Yeah.
Nobody taught us this.
Gymnastics. To me, that was remarkable.
Man,
when you look back,
man,
when you look back on that, you're talking about gymnasts.
I know,
who are classified as tumblers.
Exactly.
We were flipping, but when we
were flipping in the hood, but that's what they called it.
Exactly.
It's still called we were
gymnastics.
But in the hood, we don't know that word gymnastics. We just know it as tumblers and flippers.
Right.
But we were self-taught. No, we didn't go to no school.
No.
We didn't go to any school and have some trainer or whatever.
No.
We didn't do that in basketball, football, gymnasts, swimming. We were self-taught. Because when you grow up the way that black people grow up, the majority of black people, it's feast or famine.
Yeah.
You got to get out there, man, and you have to learn on your own. You have to grow up as a man, because a lot of us, probably 75% of us, grow up in a single family with just a mother.
Yeah.
So we have to pretty much be men.
That was us.
That was us.
That was us.
That was us.
My third question is, because you pretty much spoke to it. It really was, what was it like growing up? What was that experience like for you? I mean, I know you just touched on a lot, because, I mean, you said a whole lot in just not having a particular guidance, but we were self-taught. We gravitated to learning instinctively.
Yeah.
And then we learn from each other.
Right.
I tell people all the time, they would ask me like, well, man, how did you develop this? How did you develop that? I said, well, I had older brothers.
Right.
And I said, I had a brother who had a skill set that was beyond where a lot of times you didn't really hear about it, but I knew, and everybody in our neighborhood knew. So that was a stepping stone for me, because I felt like if I can get to that level, then I ain't worried about nobody else. I ain't worried about the competition. If I can get to my brother's level, if I can do some of the things that he's doing, then
I'm all right.
I'm gonna kill my grade. I'm gonna kill my class.
Right.
So because a lot of people don't really understand, I always played up.
Right.
Because you and I, our
birthdays
are so close together.
So
I always played
you
up.
played with me.
I always played
we
with
was
you.
always pretty much on the same team. You didn't play younger because you had to play older, because we were,
exactly. Right. When even in grade school, you guys on the 6th grade team, but I'm on the 6th grade team because my brother's one of the stars of the 6th grade team.
Right.
So they like, well, that's his little brother.
Right. But you was in the 5th grade playing with the 6th grade.
I was in the 5th grade playing with the 6th graders.
Overall, growing up, man, as a kid, it wasn't really bad. It was
no.
When you grow up with brothers, man, like how we did, man, we would create stuff. Remember, we used to put the hanger on the door and play basketball on the door.
Yeah.
When you grow up with brothers, man, it's just like, we grew up. We were poor, but we didn't know we were poor.
Right.
There was times where we didn't really have this and we didn't have that, but.
Yeah.
For us, pretty much everybody in the neighborhood grew up the way we grew up. So,
they just didn't talk about it.
Nobody really talked about it. But I think we had a decent childhood, man. We wasn't beaten as kids. We wasn't denied things. We had a mom that worked her tail off, man, and always stayed employed. And even when she would lose a job, she wouldn't be out of a job too long, because she would get another one.
Right.
We had an extremely, extremely responsible mother, man, who she took care of us.
Yeah.
She really, really took care of her boys. I can say that.
She did.
She
did. No doubt.
She took care of her boys.
I speak to that all the time.
Yeah.
Even in the settings that we come into together,
right.
I let people know. That this was the case. This was the model.
Right.
But the other thing too, like, I know you were a great athlete. I know that you had this skill set, And as you developed in that, what was your organized experience like, and when did we know you played it in youth? When did it stop? When did you stop pursuing that craft? You know, and what really turned your interest elsewhere?
We started, on a professional, well, not professional, but we started on a skill taught level in terms of having coaches when we were probably 8 or 9 or something like that.
Yeah.
From
little longer, maybe 9 and 10.
Yeah, and then so from that point on, we did the whole Junior All-American and the YMCA and all the park leagues, and as we got older, we went up into middle school and in high school. Right. But the thing that made me stop was this. There was a coach at Morningside High, and his name was Coach Hawk, and I saw how he treated like a lot of the other players or whatever. And me and you, we grew up. We didn't have a father, so we didn't have anybody to go home to and say, "Hey, Dad, this coach grabbed me or he hit me or whatever." So I was really afraid to play so my athleticism stopped as a sophomore because I didn't want to play for Coach Hall. Yeah. I didn't want to play for him because I didn't want to get smacked up and all that stuff. I didn't want to get beat up by this coach. Or I didn't want to, I was a timid kid. I was the type of kid where, I was a popular kid.
You didn't have to be aggressive. You could just talk to me.
Man, that's how I was as a kid.
Right.
And I wasn't going to allow this man to mistreat me. So I stopped playing.
Okay. Because really, of course, we grew up right down the street from Morningside. I mean, Inglewood was our family. We watched some of the great players before us. I mean, we were kids going to watch Lafayette Fletcher and Hollywood and Fidget Midget. Michael Dennis that played at Inglewood High. I mean, we saw
Roland Tatum.
I mean, Byron Scott. I mean, we saw these guys.
Ralph Jackson on the other side.
Exactly. Jay Humphreys.
Right.
And watching these guys, even Dwayne Polee. And Tweet.
His brother.
We watching these guys.
Who was my coach.
Exactly. You can't forget the Walkers.
Oh my God.
The Walkers. These are legends. We watching. Barry Walker, Stan. Marv. Smooth. So we looking at these guys, and it's like it would be a travesty not to go to It would just be disrespect.
It was in our DNA to go.
Yeah, because honestly, when I saw you not go further after the 10th grade because of Hawk, that made me not want to play for Hawk. That made me want to go to Inglewood,
to another school.
To another school, because I'm looking at it like this too. I'm like, well, I'm the aggressive type, but at the same time, who want to be disrespected? I want to learn. I want to reach my potential. And I thought about it like the Blues Brothers.
Oh yeah.
We watched them since we were kids, right? So I'm looking at Anthony, and I'm like,
and Winton.
Yeah, and Winton. He was special. I'm looking at Anthony because I'm like, my game is similar to Anthony's. You know what I'm saying? This dude is a great athlete. He's small, but he's effective. So I'm like, but at the end of the day, I really felt like we could have done some greater things together on that level, because just like with those brothers, it was a tandem. Yeah. And then here, I'm the quarterback. Yeah. You the receiver. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
You got the Blues Brothers and the Mays Brothers.
Right. You know, and that was really the history of Morningside.
Yeah.
It was family. Yeah. Look at the Huffs.
Yeah.
The Huff brothers,
Oh, man.
And shout out to Marcus Huff, because he's the one that went to the house, knocked on the door, and asked Mom if we could play tackle football. If he doesn't, convince Mom that it's cool to let us play, we probably would have never played tackle.
You know what's so funny with Marcus? Marcus always was kind of a father figure to us, even though he wasn't that much older than us. But when you're 12 and 13, and this other man, there's a young kid is 16 or whatever.
That's mature.
Right. So he always kind of cultivated us and took us under his wing. and looked out for us.
Right.
He all Marcus Huff was our guy.
Right. Same thing with Kevin Rayford.
He
was the same way.
He was the same way.
He was that big brother who always, whether you wanted to hear it or not, he was gonna always tell you the right thing.
Hey, look, I learned a lot from Kevin.
Me too.
This dude, let me tell you something. Kevin turned me on to a lot of music, a lot of maturity.
Yeah.
He was family oriented.
Yeah.
He was a mama's boy, but Kevin was a good guy, and to this day he's a good dude. But Kevin don't know this, but that I learned a lot from Kevin Rayford.
Yeah.
The couple of years that me and this dude was good friends. Kevin, matter of fact, Kevin Rayford was a dude that got me partying, taking me to
to the convention center?
Man,
right?
the convention center, Carolina West, all these other clubs, because his whole little crew. Them dudes was like
older.
They were a couple of years older than me, but I always had older friends.
Yeah.
But man, I learned a lot from Kevin Rayford.
Yeah.
Kevin Rayford, he
I
turned me on
still
to a lot. Matter of fact, Kevin Rayford is the reason why I got my driver's license. I took my driving test in his mom's car in the Subaru. He allowed me to do it. Kevin's a good, man. Kevin's a good dude.
Yeah, I mean he's still family. He's
he always gonna be family.
He's still right there with us. He does a lot of great support. To the ministry and things like that.
Yeah.
There's another question I kind of ask. Just so the audience that's listening that will continue to follow us. And I know we're going to bring you back because I know we're going to get a lot of feedback from this. I think the dynamic of, childhood to being a teenager to being a young adult has everything to do with your foundation.
Right. Because
you either have a bad one or you have a not so good one.
Right.
Or you just have a good one,
a great one, right?
And so I think it goes back to what you said earlier about being self-taught and not having, that father figure that stepped up and said, you know what, we're going to do this, we're going to make this happen.
Right.
So with that, understanding that your level of interest for sports capped off after realizing this gentleman that was in charge that you didn't gravitate to, right?
Not at
so
all.
you immediately went into what I believe was always in you. You went into the workforce.
Right.
It was all about I got to get $1.
Yeah, I got to make some money.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I mean, speak to that because you only 16, and you giving up something that you realized was basically a sport. It was just a sport. It was a game.
Right.
So speak to, that transition.
I think I'm gonna tell you something. I think growing up, the way we grew up, I was always the one that was the mature one in terms of what mom thought.
Yeah.
I wasn't the oldest. I was the responsible one. So I kind of got that whole thing in me. As a kid, I think mom had a lot to do with it, and I think us growing up and me seeing how hard she had to work, and me wanting things, and I think you guys were a little different than me. I think I was the one that always wanted the new this or the new that, and I think you guys were a little bit more like, whatever.
Yeah.
You wanted it, but you didn't want it like I wanted it.
Right.
So I think that played a lot in me saying, well, you know what? I ain't gonna play ball or whatever. I'm gonna go get a job, because now if I go get a job, I can make money. I can go buy me, the nice little things that I wanted, the new kicks or whatever. And I think from that point on, it was like me working hard and me making money was like the thing to do for me.
Okay.
I knew the athleticism stuff was over, so I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go get a job. That way I don't have to ask anybody for nothing.
Right.
I don't have to not go without like how we did as kids sometimes. And I'm like, man, I don't want to grow up like this.
Right.
We come home and the lights is off.
Yeah. No, you're right.
We come home
real talk. That's real talk.
And you know what's so funny? It
That's
was
real
so normal for us to come home and the lights would be off, or we didn't have any hot running water. It happened so many times. We adapted to it.
Right. Because we do. Let's go get the candles.
Let's go get the candles.
Let's ride it out.
Let's put the iron on the stove so we can iron our clothes. And when the iron breaks,
exactly.
So we grew up in adversity, and I think that adversity made us who we are today.
Right.
And a lot of times, that's why people who has never grown up with any kind of adversity, you can't really tell me nothing. If you've never walked in my shoes, then what can you really tell me? When you grew up the way that we grew up, and then we still standing, and we were able to endure all that adversity that we went through, and we still standing, and we're still intelligent men, and I mean, come on, man. I mean, yeah.
So what was in you is basically it's innate, because you obviously had ambition all along.
Right.
And then you were able to do something that many people at 15 and 16 aren't able to do.
Right.
Which is make a decision to say, I want independence.
Yeah.
I want more.
Yeah.
See, because some people grow up in an environment and that's all they aspire to.
Yep.
They don't have any other interest to aspire beyond their situation.
Yeah, it's almost having like a plan B or plan C or whatever. And what's so funny is, it was so bad to where when I started making money, I pretty much dropped out of school as a junior.
Right.
Or was that a senior?
Your
as a junior?
junior. I pretty much your last semester.
I pretty much just kind of dropped out of school and was going to go and get my GED because I was more interested in working. But then something kind of told me after the fact, because all my friends was 1 year younger than me anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what, man? Instead of me getting my GED, I'm gonna go back to the same high school that I pretty much flunked out of. Yeah. I never cared what people thought about me or whatever.
But that never even was a.
It was
that,
never
even a conversation.
Yeah.
Because everybody knew that you always worked.
Yeah.
And a couple of your buddies.
Yeah.
You always worked.
Yeah.
Little Rodney Williams.
Yeah.
We Cornelius Willis.
Yeah.
So you guys always worked. We understood that. So, but we had so much respect, and we had so much of a name to where nobody was gonna come like that. Nobody's gonna give out that kind of disrespect.
No, not to us.
Because first of all, that ain't the case.
Right.
I walked away from something.
Right.
So it's not like I didn't perform.
Right.
I underachieved.
Right.
So at the end of the day, they wasn't coming at you like that. So that's first and foremost.
And I think it was a mature thing for me to do is to set aside any kind of pride I may have had and say, hey, look, I'm going to go back and get my my diploma. I don't want to. I don't want a GED. So, for any, youngster that may be listening or anybody's parent that may be listening and want to tell their kid or whatever, hey, you can go back and do it. I mean, the thing about it is, man, I never, ever, ever cared about what someone thought about me. Because I knew the kind of guy I was. And I know the kind of man I am today. So...
And you only had like 2 classes.
That's it. I think
your senior year.
I think I had like office.
Right.
With Mr. Mr. Matthews.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Mr. Matthews. I had him. And then I had.
Of course, you had to have civics.
And I had Coach Tatum.
Right.
As I think I was with his aide, and Coach Bias. I was one of his teachers' aide. And I think I didn't need civics. I had passed civics. Okay. I think you only need 2 years of civics or 3 years. You don't need 4 years of civics, do you?
I think you need 4.
Okay, I think I had civics. That was it.
But that's like
I didn't need math. I didn't need English.
Right.
I didn't need none of that other stuff. All I needed was civics, and I was getting out of school at 12.
Right.
Yeah, so it was cool.
Right. So I mean, are you married? You have children?
Married right now. Have a daughter. My daughter's 16, about to be 17 years old, and that's I mean, I don't know about the whole marriage thing. So I mean, if you want to speak on that about it, if you want to ask me some questions, but right now, married. Yeah, married with a daughter.
Okay. The profession that you're in now. And I know you've always been an entrepreneur, but you've always had jobs too. You've had jobs early on, but now at this stage of your life, you've been doing for the last 25 years. I mean, you worked in the industry of the escort. Yep. And not female escort.
No.
But,
funeral escort. Transporting the by law in the state of California, any funeral procession that goes to a cemetery and has more than 2 cars, you need to, by law, you have to have a motorcycle escort to get you to the cemetery. So I did that for 12 years. Along with me doing that, I always, was doing the acting thing. So here and there, if I don't book nothing with that, so
So entrepreneurship
has
always been.
Always had that kind of entrepreneur thing.
What has been, or what is one of the greatest challenges that you've had and that you've overcome as a black man? Just as a black person, a black man in America.
You know what? One of the biggest challenges that a black man has in just being a black man, I don't care where you are, what continent, wherever you are, just having to go the day-to-day challenges of someone of another race, knowing that they're prejudiced, knowing that, you know, they may be afraid because you're there. You know, you driving down the street, they locking their doors. You know, you walking in an elevator and a lady's clutching her bag because they think you're gonna take it. People judging you because they see the negative stereotype black man on TV and on the news. So in their mind, they think every black man is that. So, you know, just being stereotyped as that black man on the news, what society and the news perpetuates that black man to be, and just going through life having to prove yourself to say, like, hey, look, we're all not the same.
Right.
You know, you have ignorance in every race.
And they're not proving themselves.
Oh, they really haven't proven themselves, especially after a couple of days ago with what happened on Capitol Hill. I mean, that was just a travesty.
Right.
You know.
So to look at our position in America as black people, you know, minorities, so they say, there is a greater reason to be better. There's more initiative to be better than what the stereotypes say.
Right.
Which we do that by sharpening our skill. Right. We do that by creating something, within our ability.
Right. And we do that by being successful. We do that by being intelligent, because they don't think that we're intelligent. They don't think that we can be successful.
Right.
So when you prove them wrong, or when you come up, because I've had many people. Okay, for example, I drive Uber as well.
Okay.
And I've had I probably had over 20,000 people in my car, and I probably had several thousand white people, and we always get into conversations, and then these white people they'll ask me, they would say, well, where are you from? And where'd you get your education from?
Right.
Because in their minds, they think that all black men are the same. They're so caught up on this stereotypical black man that's ignorant. He's not well spoken.
Yeah.
They think that all black men are ignorant.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And this, like you said before, it's a stereotype that we have to, rise above.
Right.
Because it's one thing, we may not ever be able to change the perception of the black man.
Right.
But we can make a difference in our
ourselves.
presentation.
Yeah,
exactly.
in ourselves.
Our personal presentation can cause someone to walk away and say, he was different.
I've done it, and you've done it.
Yeah.
So I've run up again. They're like, oh my God. And if I had a nickel for every white person to look at me like, this ain't the average black dude,
Right.
I would be rich, because they're not looking for you to be able to hold a conversation with them on their level. And they're like, oh my God, this guy is, and I've even had white people say, well, how old are you again?
Right.
Because we don't really look our age.
Right.
And then I start talking about things that was 30 years ago or whatever, and they're looking at me like, well, how old are you?
Right.
And I blow their mind when I tell them
Right.
how old I am,
Right.
and then they're like, man, this guy right here is something else. He's not the average, person that,
Yeah. The entire concept that black men are less than, or black men are a particular way, really should ignite something within us all to understand that we need to empower each other.
Right.
We need to come together and help one another sharpen their skill through information, through resources. It's sad that we have become and I think LeBron James is speaking to it now, that we've become the center of their entertainment.
Right.
More so than respected for being just human.
For being just human.
Just human. He didn't even go into, personal, individual abilities.
Right.
He was just saying, you don't even respect us
as a human being.
As human
beings, yeah. It's the truth.
And I think that, like, and this goes to, one of my last questions. Being that you're a black man in America, you're a young man, and you're experienced enough to have gone through some history to be able to share it with young people and even middle-aged people as it relates to what we're up against. So as a black man with a family, what is your take on relationships? And I mean this regarding the black family. What are the dynamics of relationships with the black family? And I mean from spouses to children to siblings. Speak to that, because to me, we haven't fully understood that.
I think relationships, and I think those relationships with the black family, with the man and the woman and the kids, I think it should be a positive thing that the kids can look at and see. I think that this kid should be able to look at the mother and the father and respect them. I think that the black woman should really, really respect her black man. And I think that the black woman doesn't know what the struggle of this black man is. Her plight is much differently than the black man's struggle. Right. And I think before you knock that black man, take a, go
look at his position.
Look at his position. Look at what he has to go through just being black. People don't even understand it's a job being black. Just being black in this America, it's a job in itself. I mean, we look what happened to the little young 14-year-old boy, the little young girl, white girl, accused him of stealing her phone and was so dead set on this guy stole her phone. And her phone was found by an Uber driver and took it back to the hotel. But anyway, I think that the black, we as black men, we want to support our black women. A lot of us are good black men. You got some dudes that ain't really, that good or whatever. And and that's in every race. But I just think that black women in particular have the power to, in terms of that, how that black man evolves and the way that he's going to treat other people and treat his kids and treat her. Yeah. I think it has a lot to do with the black women. And the black women, I just don't, I love our black women, but I think a lot of our black women, they don't give the support and the accolade and the they just don't give the support that black man needs, especially if you got a solid black man that's working his butt off and he's doing the right thing and he ain't laying on the couch and not working and he's not bringing any butter home and any bacon home. Right. I think if this, you got to respect. I think black men and black women should respect each other. Right. As black people. Right. And if we don't respect each other, then everybody else is going to look at it as targets. They ain't going to respect us either. The white Americans not going to respect us. Yeah. Latino.
But that's why they treat us that way.
That's why they treat us that way.
Because they see how we treat each other.
They see how we treat each other.
It's almost like I cringe when I see and I'm not saying that other races don't do this. Right. I'm talking about our race because that matters. Because I'm black.
Exactly.
So when I'm in a grocery store or a retail store and I see a black woman shouting to the top of her lungs to her young, small male child, and this child is pretty much traumatized.
He's traumatized
because the anger that he's feeling that's being projected to him is just excruciating when it comes to his future development, right? Yeah. And really, you can almost guess that a lot of this frustration and anger is coming from the male that is probably giving her hell in her life, right, or no longer in her life, right, and she's believing that she's having it so difficult because he doesn't help.
Right. So she's
and
taking
now
it out.
She's taking it out on the
She's
kid.
projecting it to the kid.
Right. Right. So so I'm learning that the resolve has to come through respect. For that black man, and vice versa,
and for the black woman,
and vice versa, because and you can speak to this, we grew up without our biological father, right. That dynamic was major, but not major enough to where it overshadowed the love that mom showed for us, because she was and is a great example. She didn't leave us places.
No.
She didn't, of course her siblings, occasionally, looked after us. But
because she had to work.
She was responsible enough to make sure that she came back
and
us.
got us.
There you go.
We always had a bed to sleep in.
We always had hot food to eat.
Yeah.
And when we didn't, she knew how to make that happen.
She knew how to make it happen.
So in our eyes, we knew we had a model. We knew how to respect this black woman. Right? We knew how to embrace her leadership.
Right.
And we didn't get it misunderstood that she was trying to be a man versus being who she was, which was a black woman.
Yeah. And you have to understand something else too, and we may have to touch on this topic much, much later, but you have to understand the generation that me and you grew up in, it's different. You have to understand from the kids that was born the kids that was born in the 80s, like from 82, 83, 84, 85, you have to understand that those kids pretty much raised themselves because their mothers and fathers was either in prison or the mother was a crackhead, and the grandparents ended up having to raise these kids. So these are the kids that we're seeing now with all the stuff that you're seeing on social media, whatever. Those kids aren't our age. No. Those kids are between 20s up to like maybe in their early 30s. Yeah. They have no respect. No. And that's the reason why. I mean, our black race is so. I mean, we need help, man. We honestly need help, and I don't know if we're gonna see it, while we're still here on this earth. But that era, man, that '80s era, from that point on to now was horrible. Yeah. And we may have to touch on that in another topic because that was the crack era. Definitely. And if you wasn't selling crack, you was on crack. Right. If you had 3 uncles and 3 aunts, 2 of the uncles and 2 of the aunts was on crack. Right.
It was affected.
The mother was on crack. Yeah. The grandmother was on crack. Yeah. But the kids were still being born. Yeah. And the kids raised themselves.
And some of the kids were actually born with those symptoms from having a crack.
I know plenty. I know a guy right now who was on crack, and his girl, and the offspring is all jacked up. Right. Yeah. They're all jacked up. They got ADD, learning disorders. Right. They got ADD. They got anger problems. They're bipolar. Yeah. And it's a result of the drugs that the parents was using during that era. Yeah. That's another topic we may have to touch on another time. In the 80s.
Definitely.
So
to just close everything out, I think the social norm is, to me, a wrong perspective. Yeah. The black race in its entirety has never been what mass media portrays.
Oh no, it's never been projected that way.
We've never been this demonstrative community
that they say that we are.
They say we are.
They perpetuate this kind of negative stereotype about us.
Like we're savages. Exactly.
Yeah. And we saw the savages yesterday on the news or 2 days ago.
In history.
And that was horrible.
Don't lie.
Oh my God.
Lynching people from trees and dismembering their bodies, and things like that, and burning them, alive.
And here's another topic that we may have to touch on in a later time is the young kids these days. They don't know the history of Emmett Till and Medgar Evers. No. And all these people who were demonstratized and killed and whatever back in the era. And if they knew the history of that, they would probably be better people, and they would be more conscious of the stuff that they do and whatever. They don't know.
They don't know.
And then what they're
don't
teaching
know.
these kids in school, they should be teaching these kids something else.
Yeah. Well, we already know that system is
That's
given
another
by the state.
That's another
That's
topic.
a whole so that dynamic, it's like, it's almost like during slavery. Why would you educate the slaves? Because if you educate them, then they're going to have the knowledge that they're enslaved.
Exactly.
A lot of them don't even know they're enslaved.
Yeah, they think this is it.
Is the best they got.
They think this is it.
Yeah.
I'm going up to the big house.
Right.
You know, I mean, I'm in the big house. I'm
Right.
so they think this is it.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, man, it's been great to have you. Thank you so much for sharing.
Appreciate it.
And we're gonna come back, and we're gonna do quite a few other things, and I'd love for you to co-host with me.
Okay.
We bring in some other talent.
Yeah.
Some guys have been knocking at the door, wanting to get in, which are guys that we know, we respect, and I'm looking forward to bringing them in. And so stay tuned for some of these